Hi, Lee.
Hey, how's it, guys? How are you?
Finding yourself.
Awesome. Thank you for coming today.
Thanks for having us. We appreciate it. No, we you know what? We took some time because we think it's important to understand a little bit about medical aid, life cover, all that stuff. You know, we're a couple that's been going out for a while, and
5 years now?
5 years.
years.
That's very good.
I've gotten to my 30s, and you know, there's things that are going on in your day-to-day life. I've seen some of my friends get sick. I've seen some friends have injuries, and I just want to be a little bit more prepared. I want to plan ahead.
Yeah.
So I think coming to see you was on our to-do list.
I think when we spoke on the phone, you also told me that when you were at school, one of your friends from school got cancer.
Yeah, I remember that.
And she was only like 17.
16 years old, she had cancer. So I mean, it's been something that I've been subject to, you know, my whole life really. Seeing that type of stuff happen to youngsters.
Yeah.
You know, God forbid something happens to us, but I mean, you got a proper preparation.
Got to take the precautions.
But you are on a medical aid, or you want to go on a medical aid together?
Yeah, just I think for our age and where we are in our lives, you know, like which medical aid would we need to take out at the point that we are in our lives?
Yeah. So, you know, we've been looking after quite a few clients over the last 20 years, and we preferably use Discovery. You know, I think they're the best. They're the largest in South Africa. As an open medical aid means basically that anyone can join.
Okay.
If you understand what that means, you understand what that means.
Yeah, simple.
Okay.
Simple enough.
And the thing with Discovery is they've got multiple plans. I mean, we've got the brochure here. We can go through their brochure just now. But I mean, they've got many plans starting from 9,000 Rand a person. Quite expensive.
Yeah.
You won't be able to afford your rental if you're on that plan, especially if it's, you know, 17,000 for two people. It's the comprehensive plan. I think that kind of plan is either you have to have a lot of money, or fundamentally you should have developed something like major cancer or major stroke, or unfortunately been in some major car vehicle accident where you're going to need continuous treatment, physiotherapy and all those kind of things. So that covers that, but it's very expensive.
Okay.
So most young people today are on either a hospital plan, plain hospital plan, like we're in the Western Cape, so it's called the Coastal Core, which is what it says, a hospital plan. So if you need to go to hospital, you can be admitted into a private hospital. And I think that's important as a starting base.
Now I'll ask you something. Does the Coastal Core mean that you have to live near the ocean, like Sea Point, Camps Bay?
So Coastal Core basically means it's for anyone that's living on the coast. They gave a slightly discounted rate. I mean, when I say slightly discounted, it's neither here nor there. You know, it might be 50, 60 Rand less expensive than the Essential Core, which is for people that are not on the coast. So if you're in Bloemfontein or in Oudtshoorn or in Johannesburg, you could be on an Essential Core as a young person. So basically understanding that it means it's a hospital plan. You can go to any hospital and it's covered at the medical aid rate, or the Discovery health rate, medical aid rate, very similar thing. Okay. So that's important, right?
Yeah.
It'd be important to go to hospital.
So it only covers like X amount?
It covers you in hospital at the rate of the medical aid rate, basically meaning if a surgeon or anaesthetist or a specialist charges more than the medical aid rate, then you will have to pay in the extra that they are charging. But you do get surgeons and anaesthetists that do charge the medical aid rate. They're just few and far between.
Yeah.
And that's why people take gap cover. But let's just, before we move on to gap cover, let's just look at the other plans as well. So we understand the core plan just means I can go into hospital. Okay. So it's not covering dentistry, it's not covering going to my doctor, it's not covering going to a gynecologist. It does cover pregnancy, obviously, and all those things. If you move up from there, one of the other plans that many people are on are the Classic Smart plan, okay, which I don't think is a bad plan. Classic Smart also covers hospitals, but they're hospitals in a network, private hospitals in a network. So, for example, currently in the Western Cape, we have, for example, Kingsbury. You know Kingsbury Hospital?
Kingsbury? Yeah.
Cool. You know Constantiaburg?
Yeah.
Okay, so those are all private hospitals. The Classic Smart plan covers anaesthetists and specialists at 2 times the medical aid rate. So that is better than 1 times the medical aid rate.
Yeah.
It covers GP visits, again at a network GP, but there are good enough GPs in a network. Okay. And I think currently for this year in 2025, you're paying 90 Rand a consultation.
Oh,
so,
geez, it's a lot cheaper than normal.
When I look for individuals and you look at the coastal core, for example, for an individual, and that's just a hospital plan, as we said. And then you consider the classic smart plan as an option. The classic smart plan is actually about 50 to 90, 60, somewhere around there, less expensive than the coastal core, but it does give you GP visits for 90 Rand. So the negative thing about the classic smart plan, because of the network hospitals, is if you go see your doctor because you've got a problem and the doctor recommends you to one of his colleagues or people that he works with, that's a surgeon or a specialist, and then that surgeon or specialist says, okay, you need to come in for this procedure, and that procedure, for example, is at Vincent Pallotti Hospital in Pinelands, and that hospital isn't on the network, and you still want to use that surgeon to do your procedure, then you have to pay in a co-payment, which can be up to 9,000-10,000 Rand, something like that.
It doesn't mean you can't go to Vincent Pallotti, though.
You can go to Vincent Pallotti, but you'd have to pay in the co-payment for using that hospital.
Okay.
Okay. So you don't get everything in life. That's, unless you want to pay like 9,000 Rand
a month.
per person. So I like the classic smart plan for that reason. It's if you combine that with gap cover, which I said we'll talk about, the gap cover does cover you if you go to a hospital that's not in the network. I think they pay up to 12,000 Rand if you go to a hospital that's not in the network. Do you understand what that means? Do you understand?
Yeah. So if I go to a hospital outside of the prescribed network from Discovery, we're going to pay a little bit more than usual if you're on the classic smart plan, you said.
Correct. You're going to pay in about 9,000 or 10,000 Rand because you're using a hospital not in the network.
Yeah.
Unlike the coastal core, which obviously you can go to any hospital.
That's okay.
So the choice is between.
But then you don't get the GP visits.
Yeah, it's 90 Rand a GP visit. So I think
it's pretty fair. Very fair.
In flu season, people get sick. They might want to go see a GP. So GPs can cost anything from 500, 400 to 900 Rand a consultation. At least you'll have a GP in a network that you can go to that's 90 Rand consultation. And if you have to go into a hospital because you've got some kind of condition, you could find a specialist that is practicing in Constantiaberg or at Vincent Pallotti, or if in the northern suburbs, there are hospitals in the network in the northern suburbs and across the country, obviously, because we're not just talking Western Cape, but I'm just giving you a broad idea of how they work.
Okay.
And then next plan you could look at is like a coastal saver. Okay, so coastal saver is again a hospital plan. Outside of the coast, it would be called an essential saver. And then it's a hospital plan. You go to any hospital and they give you X amount of savings for the year, which you can use for day to day. So if you go to a pharmacy or if you go wherever, but that savings will get eroded pretty quickly. And then you're back on just a hospital plan. So it's really fundamentally a hospital plan with some savings for day to day. For me, this is my opinion, the only reason to have a coastal saver is if you need MRI scans or CT scans or PET scans.
Because those are quite expensive.
They are expensive. So for myself, I'm on a coastal saver. I went in 2023 December for a CT angio, not because there was something wrong with my heart, but I just wanted to make sure. Because I noticed quite a few of our clients were starting to get stents and bypasses. So CT angio is a pretty good examination. You won't need it, hopefully, at your age, to make sure that there's no narrowing or stenosis or blockages in your arteries. That scan was 18,500 Rand.
Jeez,
okay, so I had to pay in, I think it was 3,900 because I'm on a saver. So you pay in a co-payment. The balance was paid out of the hospital benefit, so I didn't have to pay that.
Okay.
And then because I've also got gap cover, I claimed back the 3,900 co-payment from my gap cover. So in essence, really, I nearly got a 18,000, 19,000 Rand scan for free.
For free.
Oh, jeez.
Just on the coastal.
So that's the importance of having gap cover.
Is that where, can I ask you something, Lee? Would you have had the same outcome where that whole procedure was basically paid for if you were not on a saver plan but still had gap cover?
So if I had a coastal core plan, just a pure hospital plan, or essential core plan, just a pure hospital plan, I would have had to pay that whole thing myself. So 18,000, whatever it is, 18,900. If I had gap cover, the gap cover we use is Turnberry. I think they're one of the best because we've got probably about 1,000 clients on Turnberry. So we know how they work. And even if you're on a core plan, they still pay, I think, 4,500 Rand towards the MRI or CT or whatever scan you're having. Obviously, 18,900 minus 4.5, I would have still had to pay 14,000 Rand.
Sure.
So gap cover is important, not just because you might need an MRI scan, but yeah, if you land up in hospital, normally the surgeons and anesthetists and specialists charge more than the medical aid rate. Sometimes I've seen them charge 5.5 times the medical aid rate, especially with childbirth, cesareans, those kind of things. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, so from what I understand, just explain to Alana here is...
I'm not saying you must have children tomorrow, but I'm just saying...
you can go to hospital for whatever reason, and depending on who's doing whatever, they can charge you like 400% of the rate. And then that's where that gap cover, it's quite literally just closing the gap between what the hospital is charging and what the specialist is charging, and that amount.
Well, let's not say that the hospital, all hospitals predominantly are covered at medical aid rate. It's usually the specialists, anesthetists and surgeons that can charge more than the medical aid rate. So that's where gap cover helps. And it also helps if you need to have an MRI or CT scan. It also helps with many other things. So, you know, we want to just go quickly through gap cover. On these core plans, saver plans, even Discovery's classic priority plans, I think the cancer benefit is 250 or 300,000 this year. So we had a client, she got stage 4 colon cancer. She went through 500,000 Rand in like 6 months of treatment. So where there's a shortfall now of say 250,000, you'd have to pay the co-payment, which is 20%. Above, because now you've depleted your 250,000, say oncology benefit on, for example, my plan. So there's a 250,000 left over. Out of the 250,000, you have to pay 20%. That's a shortfall.
So 50,000 basically.
Yes, and then you can claim back that from gap cover as well. So gap covers do cover the shortfalls for where there's an oncology shortfall, besides just specialists.
Yeah, so I was going to say, Alana's a high-end chef, and, you know, let's just say working with those types of knives, you have a slip, chop off a piece of your finger. I mean, you've gotten close a few times. Cut your finger. Yeah, you don't want to lose a fingy.
Yeah.
But under the instance that she does damage her hand and she's unable to work now, let's say for like...
Well, we're not, I mean, she needs to go to the emergency room to have stitches.
Yes.
That kind of thing.
Okay.
Then she could claim back from the gap cover, from Turnberry.
Really?
She'd have to pay it. You know, it might be 2,000, 3,000 Rand. Maybe they'll do an X-ray, do a couple of stitches, send you back to work or back home, and then you'll claim back from Turnberry's gap cover as an accidental injury. And I think it's up to 11,000 Rand per claim this year.
That's really that sounds
so gap
important.
Cover is important, and it goes together with your medical aid normally. But everything for younger people is based on affordability. Right. So it's working out what's the most important things I need to have. So most people at your age are driving a car. So when they're driving a car, they'll normally have insurance just in case there's an accident. Correct?
Yeah.
So the next thing obviously is if there's an accident, and I'm injured, I need to go to hospital. So therefore you would have a hospital plan.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the base. You start off there, a hospital plan, and then you can say, okay, I could have some savings as well if you've got some spare money. Because obviously the saver plan are more expensive. The saver plans are more expensive than just a plain hospital plan.
Okay.
It's funny you mentioned the car insurance, but I got a lot of my friends, you know, because I'm in my 30s, a lot of my friends in their 30s demographic all have actually got car insurance.
That makes sense.
I don't know how many actually are on a medical aid.
Yeah, most of them have, yeah, that's very true.
Well, the problem is, you know, it's all about affordability. So, yeah, that's the problem.
I mean, it doesn't make sense. I want to protect my car in case something happens, but I'm more important than my vehicle.
Yes.
Fundamentally, I mean, if I have a crash with Alana in the car, my worry isn't going to be about my car. It's going to be about Alana and I.
Well, unless you're driving a 600,000 Rand car and you twisted your knee in the accident and your
fine.
car smashed.
Yeah,
so,
that's
but
fine.
I mean, yeah, you want to have cover for everything, but everything costs money.
Yeah.
So when you look at where do we start from, you both got jobs, you're both working, you're both in a career. If you're working for yourselves, you're not on a company group scheme where you'd have to be on a medical aid. Also, if you're on a company group scheme, you would have income protection, you'd have life cover, and some companies even give you some illness cover, which is great. So then you have a whole package if you're working for a corporate company.
Yeah.
If you are working for yourself, then obviously you drive in a car, you must have car insurance, and then the next thing would be a medical aid. And a medical aid, I mean like a hospital plan, and I would go either Coastal Core or I would go Classic Smart Plan. Okay? If you decide to go Coastal Core, I wouldn't have both of you on separate plans because now you're paying more than you need to. I would have, you've been going out for 5 years, you're basically sort of like a married couple, in inverted commas. I would have you on my plan, which is less expensive. So you save money.
So Alana would be on my plan, for example, or
Yes.
vice
Or
versa.
vice versa.
Doesn't matter.
It depends.
I have a question towards where we're going in our lives now. Obviously, I'm a very healthy person, but if we are looking to have kids soon, which one would you say I should put myself on?
Okay.
If that's the direction I'm going in my life right now.
So either the Coastal Core, Coastal Saver, or that Classic Smart Plan with gap cover.
With gap cover.
With gap cover,
Okay.
because we know how much it costs when people go for cesareans. If you decide a cesarean, or if you go to hospital, in any case, you're going
And
to
then
need.
say now, for instance, somebody like my brother who's young and super healthy, doesn't really have anything underlying health issues. Which would you rather make a hospital plan for him then?
Yeah, so it's basically what I was saying. So a single person that's got no problems can develop problems tomorrow. He drives, he could be in an accident tomorrow, God forbid. So I would take a hospital plan, and I would look at either the hospital plan or the Classic Smart Plan with the GP visits, because it's slightly less expensive than just the hospital plan.
Is this the Classic Smart Plan?
Smart Plan, yeah.
Okay.
Discovery's also got some other plans, and I don't want to confuse you with the myriad of plans. They've got essential smart plans, they've got a lot of other plans, but a lot of those other plans that are less expensive than those two have exclusions.
Okay.
So some of them have got knee, back, neck, shoulder injury exclusions. So when we look at where claims come from, say, those are predominantly there's a high incident of those
for those parts of the
place,
body.
and then you can't go into the hospital because
it's excluded.
So people need to be aware of that. But saying that, at the same time, it's better to have something than nothing.
Yeah.
Because you can be on a less expensive hospital plan, like an essential smart plan, which also covers GP visits. I think it's 100 Rand per visit. For a GP, they do cover cancer and heart disease, but then they don't cover back, neck, and shoulder injuries. But you can always upgrade your plan at the end of the year. So if I've hurt my knee and I know I'm going to have knee surgery, if I can hold on, I'll upgrade my plan in the December of, for example, this year, 1st of January 2026, because we're in 2025, I would go on a higher plan so I can have my knee surgery covered. And we've done that for people.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
That makes sense.
So if I'm trying to have a baby in, let's just give it 2 years.
Yeah.
When would I need to change my plan to make sure that I would be...
You would just want the gap cover, I think.
If you on an existing plan, like a Coastal Core, or like we said, Classic Smart Plan, or Coastal Saver Plan, Essential Saver, Essential Core, whichever those plans, with gap cover, you don't really need to change your plan. You'll have cover.
Okay, so as long as you have the gap cover.
Yes, the gap cover is essential.
Okay.
When it comes to things like depression, anxiety, and those kind of things, most of the plans actually cover, I think it's 15 psych sessions.
Oh, incredible.
And 21 days in clinic for certain things. So
it's not only for
when we
physical,
look at the
it's also
trends
for mental.
today, there's a lot more people struggling with anxiety and depression that are using the psych sessions or the in clinic treatments
That's
that
awesome.
Discovery offer. And they're pretty good. So there we go. That's that.